Hello, everybody. Welcome to Epilogue. Man, joining me today is Lance.
Hey, what's up?
Man, thanks for hanging out, preaching for us here at Faith Bible Church as we're working through the Psalms this summer. So thanks for doing that.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah. I just figured this would be a great opportunity for our church body that may not know you as well, since you take care of the facilities, budget, HR.
Yeah,
I'm sure more things that I'm not aware of. So when the AC goes out, you're the guy to call.
I'm the first call.
Yeah, you're the first call. If there's a leak in the building,
Yeah.
you're fantastic. Something's wrong in the parking lot,
Yeah, let me know.
let you know. Do you want to give your cell phone number right now?
No, not. I think enough people have it now.
I bet they
I
do.
get those texts every now and then.
Yeah. Well, thanks for what you do
Yeah.
here. You do facilities, operations, HR, and you can preach and teach.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your family and how long you've been here at Faith.
So wife Ginger, been married 15 years in January, so 14 and a half now.
Cool.
2 kids, Nora, my daughter's 11, Luke is 9. It's kind of funny. We've been at this church for 9 years now. So we lived in Houston, moved up to the kind of the Woodlands, Magnolia area in 2015. Started going to church here, and then sort of felt called into ministry. And a couple of years ago, managed to find an opening here that made sense for me. So
Nice.
one of the few who it was exciting. We got to come on staff at my own church. So,
Cool.
Yeah.
And you've been on staff how long?
2.5 years now.
Very good.
Yeah.
Before that, you did a little work at Second Houston.
Yeah, so that was my first job out of college. I grew up in the Texas Panhandle, went to school West Texas A&M, and I have an uncle down here I'm very close to that's a campus pastor at one of their campuses. So he kind of finagled me an internship that I was able to turn into 5 years working at
Nice.
Second Baptist. So that was fun. I got to work in their business office, so sort of seeing how a mega church puts together a budget and does all their operations was it was fun. It was a lot going on there, but yeah.
Second Houston, just a couple hundred people.
Yeah, just a small, tiny little backwoods church. Not much going on there.
Backwoods. Wow. There it is.
Yeah.
Cool. So from the Panhandle, Borger.
Yeah.
Borger.
Not the border. Borger. I say it's like burger. It's like burger with an O.
Yeah.
Just so people know what I'm talking about.
That's good.
Yeah.
You went back there and preached at your home church?
I did. That was fun. It's the first time I've done that. They're looking for a lead pastor right now, and they've been, trying to fill the pulpit. So, I got to go back a couple months ago and preach, which was fun. There's still some people that knew me when I was, a little kid. Building hasn't changed that much, so it was a little surreal, but man, it was cool to get to go back and preach there.
First Baptist
Church, Borger, Texas.
Yeah. Is that where you accepted Christ?
No, it's funny. Borger has about 15,000 people and maybe 10 Baptist churches. So
Nice.
So my first 10 years, I think till about 4th grade, we went to a church called Calvary Baptist Church. That's the church my dad grew up in. And that's where I accepted Christ. Sunday night service, of course, we always went Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. It's always a funny story because it was Sunday night. I was pretty young, and they were doing communion, and I was sitting with my grandma, and I was like, I want to take part. And my grandma was just like, nope, you can't. I was like, all right, why not? And she started to explain to me in her own way, like, here's who this is for. It's for people who put their faith and trust in Jesus. And I was like, I want to do that. And so long conversation that night with our pastor, my parents, so prayed to receive Christ. But yeah, we spent some time there, and then decided to go to First Baptist Borger. Was just a great place for us as we were students, and really grew a lot in my faith there. So
Cool.
Yeah.
Love it. Glad you got to go back and preach at First Baptist
it was
there
fun.
and all that. So cool. I know you serve here parenting littles, even though yours aren't so little anymore.
No.
But talk about that and what you do in that life group.
So it's kind of funny for a couple years here, my wife and I helped lead a Sunday morning class for young married couples, and we did that for a couple years, and then Rick Wilcox came on as our groups pastor at the time, and he was starting this life group thing, and he asked us to do parenting littles, and the idea was we were sort of just exiting that stage. So parenting littles is for families you have kindergarten or younger. That's kind of that's kind of where you go. And we had just left that stage, so he asked us to take that on and start leading it. And it's been fun, man. It's been fun to sort of walk with couples as they're in this crazy season of life. I've told you before, we've got families that are just, I mean, they've got 3, 4 kids, and they're all under 4 or 5 years old. So
Yeah.
they're just hanging on for dear life.
It's
But
just a grind at that point.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I remember.
Yeah, but yeah, it's fun getting to know those new families. Where church just has a ton of them right now, so
Yeah, man.
it gives us. I get to teach a little bit in there, and Ginger does a lot of she's building relationships with some of the girls in there, and does a lot of the kind of directing the class, and yeah, it's good. It gives us an opportunity to get to know these new couples as they're kind of starting their families and deciding what kind of family do we want to be, and we get to speak into that some. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's cool.
Thanks for what you do, man. When I hang out with a young couple with young kids and parenting littles comes up, people brag on you all the
Oh
time.
yeah,
So
thanks, man.
yeah, you
Yeah,
guys are
yeah, we love it.
crushing it in there. So good stuff. Let's jump into this psalm.
Yeah.
Psalm 101. Just why'd you pick that one?
Yeah, so it's a personal one for me. I mean, you may know this. It's not one that most people list as their favorites, right? We're going
Yeah.
through the Psalms and people talk about, oh, this one's my favorite. This one's really meaningful. I have yet to hear someone when I say Psalm 101 that's like, oh, I love that one. They're usually like, what's that one?
Yeah.
So it's a personal one for me. So like I said, I grew up First Baptist in Borger, Texas. And I would say in that high school period, I wouldn't do anything wrong, really. I was going to church all the time, but I was going to church just because that's what we did, right? Like we were supposed to go to church, and I didn't have really any passion for my faith. And we had one of those weeks that you have in student ministry where brought in a guest speaker, and it was the only time we did it. Where I mean, we went to church every single night. It was, I guess you might call it a revival
Yeah.
in the old days, but it was that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And of course I went because my friends were going, and again, that's just what we did. Like if they were having church, we went. But brought in a guest speaker that week, a guy named Jason Kraft. That was the only time I ever heard him speak. But he took us through Psalm 101, and we stood up and read it every night that week. And what's cool about Psalm 101 is it's David saying, here are all the things I'm gonna do. Here's the type of person I'm gonna be. And so I think if you read the Psalm, you can count 15 times he either says I will or I will not do this. So it's
Yeah.
very much a like setting a course for here's who I'm going to be. And in his case, as a king, as a leader. But the question way back in high school was just like, hey, what kind of person are you going to be? What kind of people are you going to hang around? What kind of and you can see as you get into that psalm, like he's making some real strong statements. Here's who I'm going to be. Here's what I'm going to worship. Here's what I'm going to look at. All those things. And so, man, that psalm stuck with me from that time on. I mean, it's always been one I go back to kind of as a reminder. Here's who I'm going to be. And so that's kind of when you said we're going to go through the Psalms this summer. I was pretty set on I want to do that one because I think anytime when you're doing these, especially in the Psalms, when it connects with you and it means something to you, it makes it that much easier to preach and sort of try to relay that to other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, I love that story. Yeah, really cool that you guys read it every night and he just walked through it, I guess, section by section. And
yeah, we kind of, really, and if the first 3 verses really are kind of enough to walk through in a week, because he talks about what he's going to worship, what he's going to set before his eyes, walking in integrity. Like at the time for a bunch of high school guys, I mean, we're all going like, oh yeah, we gotta really make some decisions here, right? And so it was challenging for sure.
You think back to that, I mean, obviously it stuck with you. Were there some keystone things that you set in place at that moment and said, hey, I am going to do this, and you can look back and say, I followed through with it?
That's around the same time I started, simple, reading my Bible every day.
Yeah.
I really haven't looked back since then. I mean, obviously you go through seasons where it wanes a little, but honestly, from that point on, I was pretty committed to scripture. I leaned into serving a little more there. I was involved in our student ministry, but my youth pastor, who was a mentor of mine, he always had students that he put in leadership, volunteer type roles. And I'd never done any of that. And so I started doing that, which is where I sort of developed a heart for ministry, right? Like those kinds of things. And then I think it it came along at a really good time because it talks about he says, "I won't set any vile thing before my eyes." Right? I mean, we're high school guys. You know, the
Yeah.
internet is being created at the time, and we're
Yeah.
watching TV, and there's all kinds of things like available
Mhm.
to us. Really, for the first generation that suddenly got all this at your fingertips, and so
Yeah.
to set that and say, "Hey, you gotta make a decision," like, similar to Job saying, "I made a covenant with my eyes,"
Mm.
right? Like,
Yeah.
so those are things that I feel like, in the moment I was just like, "Okay, I'm gonna start doing all this," and I look back and I go, that was like a small course correction at the time, but it's a small course correction now. Looking back, it's like, oh, I'm in a totally different place because we made such a commitment then.
Yeah, you think about small course correction. What may have been 1%,
Yeah.
5% change at that point didn't seem like
Hmm.
much, but once you
Yeah.
let that thing
Yeah.
run out,
Yeah.
20 years,
Yeah. For sure.
then all of a sudden that 1% turns into something
Yeah,
massive
and
later down.
especially, I mean, anybody's got this when you look at something that was significant in high school. I mean, there's guys I sat with at that time that didn't make that course
Mm,
correction, and I can see where a couple of them are at now. I know
yeah.
what life looks like for them, and it's quite a bit different.
Mm,
And some things have been hard for them, and stuff like that. So,
yeah.
yeah, it's fun to look back on that and go, man, I'm glad we did that, right? I'm glad I was forced to go and listen to that every night.
Yeah. Love that, man. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Man, I may steal that sometime.
Okay. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. It's all yours.
Yeah. Favorite part of the psalm. I mean, you got 8 verses here. If you're just saying, hey, if I'm grabbing one of those, two of those, what are the one or two that you'd cling to?
Um, yeah, so I always go to verse 1 because I think it sets the tone there. He says,
Mm,
"I'll sing of loving kindness and justice," and those two words go together a lot in the
yeah.
Old Testament, especially, right? And it's you're sort of taking the character of God and you're saying that's what I'm going to worship, and then that really sets the tone for the rest of the psalm. And so to me, he's saying, I'm going to sing about your loving kindness and justice, and then that's how I'm going to operate
Mm,
in everything. And so the rest of it is just what results from that, right? So he's
yeah.
talking about his own integrity as he walks in his house. He talks about the type of people he's going to allow around him, the type of
Mm,
leader he's going to be, all those things. So I think the first verse really grabs you, as it does often in the Psalms. It,
sure.
it
Yeah.
grabs you, and that's what really stands out.
Yeah. That first one, I will sing, and like you said, I will
Hmm.
give, I will set. I mean, there's so many of
Yeah,
those
yeah,
that he's going to do as a result of that
yeah,
initial
yeah.
worship, if you will.
And then
So
this little, and honestly, I don't know that I've found a commentator that where they agree on this, but his question after he says that, where he says, "When will you come to me?" It's like there's a little
mm,
bitty lament in there. Like
yeah.
he's like, "Do you see me doing this?" Like, and he talks about a lot of things, walking in integrity, and there's just this idea of like he's waiting, right? He's trying to
Mm,
do these things, but he's going, "Okay, God, when are you gonna show up in
mm,
this?" So it's an interesting question right there,
yeah.
up at the top.
Yeah, most of us, if we're all honest, we felt that way at some point in our
Yeah,
lives.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
I mean, I'm trying to do the right things. I'm trying to worship. I'm
Hmm.
I'm I'm singing your praise, and it'd be nice if I could get some glimpse of you being
Yeah,
here, near,
yeah,
close, something.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Good. I like that. If you were to look at the psalm and say, I mean, outside of that, when will you come to me? That's a pretty tricky piece. But
Hmm.
what else would be, man, this would be a hard piece of the psalm, or maybe not just hard from a interpretation standpoint, but
Hmm.
application standpoint.
Yeah, I think as you get to the end of the psalm, it definitely gets closer and closer to something an Israelite king would need to say. That
Hmm.
maybe the last verse is, "Every morning I will destroy all the wicked of the land, so as to cut off from the city of the Lord all those who do iniquity," right? And so
Yeah.
that's tricky because there it's this idea that we got to protect who we are and
Hmm.
we've got to destroy people who might corrupt that.
Yeah.
And we operate differently now, right? Like we
No doubt.
we want people to come in and we're not trying to destroy the wicked. Maybe we are in the sense of we have an enemy like in the spiritual realm, but I think that verse gets tricky. It like it does in the Psalms when David's
Mm.
David's wanting his enemies to be destroyed. He's wanting them to die. He's like, I'm going to
Yeah.
cut off the wicked.
Yep.
That gets tricky when you're talking about, okay, well, what does this mean to you today? How do
Yeah.
you how do you apply that now?
Yeah, if you're thinking about from that standpoint, destroy all the wicked of the land because there's this purity and
Hmm.
this is sacred space and we want to keep it sacred. You know, for us, I mean, we might could kind of look at our homes
Yeah.
and say, man, what
Yeah.
are the things we let in and out?
Yeah.
I can't control what happens at a restaurant or a ball game
Right.
or
Right.
whatever, but I can control what I let into my house, and how
Hmm.
do I go around and make sure that I'm very proactive about
Yeah.
wickedness, evil, vile. You used that
Yeah.
word earlier, and so anyway, be thinking
Yeah,
about
it's
it
sort
that
of
way.
you think about this being written by a king who's got his domain, and we all have something like that, right? Whether it's our little
Yeah.
family or whatever. I mean, you mentioned parenting littles. We're always asking those families, like, "Hey, now's the time. Like, decide what kind of family do
Hmm.
you want to be? Like, what do you want your values to be? How do you want to spend your time?" Because, like, as you and I know, if you don't make some of those decisions when they're little,
Yeah,
by the time they're like middle school, high school, like you just feel like it's all getting away from you because you didn't decide that ahead of time, right? And
that's right. Yeah,
so from that perspective, yeah, it's like I like that idea of like, well, what's my sort of domain? It might be just my home, and here's the things we're gonna allow in, and here's the things we're gonna
mm,
sort of cut off.
yeah, love it. Um, yeah, especially man, you thinking about. I mean, obviously for you, hearing Psalm 101 as a teenager,
Yeah.
that helpful, but then also thinking about what you just said for families. I mean, this could be applicable to people who are getting married. What do we want
Hmm.
our marriage to look like? People
Yeah.
who are kids are coming into their lives.
Yeah.
What do we want our families to look like? There's
Hmm.
man, this is
Yeah. And even so many of our guys who, they're running their own business or they're managing their own team. It's like, man, how are you going to do that with integrity? Like
mm,
maybe it's not in a Christian setting, but there's still some of these things that apply there. Like, hey, we're not going to do that. We're not going to. I mean, gosh, he talks so much in here about what people say and how people try to get ahead, and he's like, we're
mm,
not having any of that. So I think it
yeah.
applies in several different areas.
Yes. You think about the Psalms, and most of the time we think about them purely devotionally.
Hmm.
And I do think there's clearly something. I mean, we sing things all the time
Yeah.
that aren't perfectly true of us.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I depend on you.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm singing that, but
Yeah. But
there are
not
plenty.
always. Yeah.
Yeah, there are plenty of times I'm not.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so it's you're singing it as a declaration of I
Hmm.
need to, I want to,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
here, this seems to be one of those, I know this is the right thing to say, and I
Yeah.
wanna set my mind and my
Yeah.
life to this.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, if it's written for a king of Israel, not a single one of them did this.
That's right.
A lot of them tried
Yeah,
to. Some of them
yeah,
did better than others.
that's right.
None of them got it just right. None of them did
Yeah,
this exactly the way they were supposed to.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, except, the one king
Right.
that will
Yeah.
come and
Yep.
perfectly model all of
Yeah, and
these.
that's what I think it draws you to, right? Like you go,
Yeah,
man, who could ever do this? What kind of
mm,
leader could ever do this? Like, well, there was one. There was
yeah,
one guy. He did it.
yeah, and he's gonna come back and do
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
perfectly.
Yeah.
Cool. Um If you had a second week to preach, you're like, "Hey, man, Russell's sick. I need you to
Yeah. Yeah.
preach
Yeah.
one more psalm." I mean, do you have another week where you came and some guy walked through some
I don't
psalm
have
or
anything
what?
like that. No. No. That's. I think you just get one of those.
Yeah, I just want to know.
Yeah. So if that were the case, I would probably go Psalm 90, that Psalm of Moses, where the sort of the center of it is teach us the number of our days so we can
Oh, yeah.
present to you a heart of wisdom. And
Okay.
it's a little heavy because he's just
Yeah.
talking about how short life is, right? Like
Yeah.
we're done. I mean, I heard a pastor preach it years and years ago, and then he played Dust in the Wind
Oh,
after he preached it, right?
nice.
So yeah. So yeah, that one, but that one's a really strong one, and something it's one I've gone back to a lot in my own devotional time, just because, like that saying says, like there's this reminder, like life is short, like
Yeah.
turn that into wisdom. Don't
Mm.
don't waste it. So yeah, I like that one. Then I mean, obviously you have a couple that I mean, Psalm 1 has always that's how we kicked it off, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
Psalm
yeah.
1 is one that I've just always
Yeah.
gone to over and over again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that was a privilege of going first.
Yeah, you
Is
took
that
that. Yeah, right.
I could take one. It's either that or like Psalm 23. I mean, there's a
Right.
couple
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
really good
Yeah.
ones
It's
that
like when you throw out, it's like one. It's like you already know 1 and 23 you're taking. Like,
yeah,
don't even
yeah,
go there.
that's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. I love it, man. Well, thanks again
Yeah.
for preaching and jumping in. Thanks for all you do here at the church, operations wise. Most of this stuff, no, everyone comes in and you take for granted that the bathrooms are working and
Right.
that
Yeah.
the roof
Yeah.
is holding up and the
Yeah.
air conditioner's on, and
Hmm.
then you're like an offensive lineman. No one notices
Right.
until you get called for holding, right?
Just this guy usually they see walking around looking concerned on a
Yeah,
Sunday morning. That's the job. Just
that's
walk
right.
around and pray everything's working.
It's good. Well, 9 times out of 10, it's great.
Yeah, most of
So
the time. Yeah, we're
yeah,
getting there.
and then the one time it has nothing to do with you. Just you're the
Yeah.
one who's got to fix it.
Yep.
So
Yep.
thanks for all you do. Thanks for
Yeah.
being
Thanks, man.
multi-talented on it and preaching and teaching and all that. So
Yeah.
cool. Thanks again, and thanks for joining us for Epilogue. And we'll do it again next week.